All right, so as we are still dealing with escalating tensions with Russia over our ongoing proxy war in Ukraine, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi decided that it would be a perfect time for her to get in a military aircraft and jet on over to Taiwan in basically what amounts to be some political posturing. So here from Common Dreams, Brett Wilkins, he says, playing with fire, says China after Pelosi lands in Taiwan. And they say Chinese warplanes took to the skies and U.S. warships were on the move on Tuesday as U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi ignored warnings from Beijing, the Biden administration, and peace activists by becoming the highest-ranking American official in 25 years to visit Taiwan. So obviously this is a pretty, important historical trip that she is making right here. It's not something that's just like a casual trip that she's making over to the island. But another thing here is that they are saying that this trip was taken basically without Biden's approval at any level, and that the Biden administration was vehemently opposed to her making this trip and saw it really as a provocation. But I'm not really 100% convinced of that. I don't think that the leader of your party in the House of Representatives, while you have a president like Joe Biden, a fellow Democrat, I don't think that she would have been able to make this trip without at least tacit approval from the Biden administration. But nonetheless, that's the narrative they are running with there. But they continue with a little bit of context here in terms of why Pelosi is saying that she's making this trip. But really what this comes down to is like context and timing. Like, why would you go and make this trip right now as we already have massive tensions with Russia over the ongoing invasion in Ukraine, while we already have, pretty tense relationships with China? What the fuck is the point of this trip? I mean, this is not something that is going to like dramatically reduce the likelihood that China is going to have some sort of an offensive action taken in Taiwan. If anything, according to the statements that we have from China so far, this type of a trip is only going to increase tensions and increase the likelihood that China feels like they have to move on Taiwan in an even shorter time period. But here's Pelosi's justification. She said in a statement on the congressional delegation's trip to the island that most of the international community, including the United States, considers to be part of China. And she said it in no way contradicts U.S. adherence to the one China policy, but rather honors America's unwavering commitment to supporting Taiwan's vibrant democracy. And she added, our discussions with Taiwan leadership will focus on reaffirming our support for our partner and on promoting our shared interests, including advancing a free and open Indo-Pacific region. What she really means there is an Indo-Pacific region that is beholden to the interests of the U.S. military-industrial complex and corporate America, but of course that's the type of rhetoric she's going to use. And they say America's solidarity with the 23 million people of Taiwan is more important today than ever as the world faces a choice between autocracy and democracy. I do find it a little bit ironic that they're framing this entire trip as like the United States always standing on the side of democracy over autocracy after Joe Biden, the leader of your party, literally just went and fist bumped with Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, probably one of, if not the single most brutal dictatorships on the face of the planet right now that's engaging in an ongoing genocide. So, forgive me if I don't believe that your priorities here are on actually protecting democracy or on standing up against autocracy. But they continue here with some statements from the Chinese government saying that China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs decried Pelosi's visit, accusing the United States of playing with fire and warning that those who play with fire will perish by it. So pretty strong statement there. But they continued here with another official statement saying China and the United States are two major countries. The right way for them to deal with each other lies only in mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, no confrontation, and win-win cooperation, 100% based and accurate. But they say the Taiwan question is purely an internal affair of China, and no other country is entitled to act as a judge on the Taiwan question. And they continue saying China strongly urges the United States to stop playing the Taiwan card and using Taiwan to contain China. It should stop meddling on Taiwan and interfering in China's internal affairs. It should stop supporting and conniving at Taiwan independence, separatist forces in any form. It should stop its acts of saying one thing but doing the opposite on the Taiwan question. It should stop distorting, obscuring, and hollowing out the one China principle. It must take credible actions to observe the strict one China principle and the provisions of the three China-U.S. joint communiques, deliver on the 5 no's, commitment made by the United States leadership, i.e. not seek a new Cold War, not seek to change China's political system, the revitalization of its alliances is not against China, not support Taiwan independence and not look for conflict with China, and not go further down the wrong and dangerous path. So, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, Taiwan is significantly more important and has significantly more historical ties with China. So the question really in my mind comes down to, like, what is the point of this visit? I mean, is the United States really willing to go to war, willing to really start World War III in order to defend the island of Taiwan? And on top of that, even if we did decide that that was the pathway we wanted to go down, then what strategic importance does it have for the United States? What are the potential consequences for the United States if we were to come to some sort of a military defense of the island? I think that those are perfectly fair questions. But in addition to that, you also have to understand the context here, which is that this trip that Pelosi is taking, even according to the Biden administration themselves, is not going to do anything in terms of moving the needle away from China potentially directly intervening in Taiwan and having more direct control over the island. If anything, this is just poking the bear and really just exacerbating the tensions and making it more likely, again, that China is going to move forward with some sort of offensive actions in Taiwan in a shorter time scale here. So I don't really see the point of this visit in any way whatsoever, even like from the perspective of the Biden administration. But they continue here saying that AntiWar Voices also condemned the speaker's trip, saying that Pelosi's Taiwan visit is unnecessary, dangerous, and utterly reckless at a time when the war in Ukraine continues. Stop the war, UK tweeted. And they also say the US is already in a proxy war with Russia, and Pelosi's visit could result in military retaliation and a dangerous cycle of escalation. And we already did have reporting here straight from Chinese state-affiliated media saying that the PLA announced that it would conduct live fire exercises in 6 regions surrounding Taiwan Island, a situation that surpassed the 1996 Taiwan Strait crisis. This is not just a demonstration, but an actual exercise to liberate Taiwan. I mean, notice the rhetoric that the Chinese government is using here. I don't think this is a liberation movement in any way, shape, or form, but they say Pelosi's visit is bound to speed up China's unification. So again, even if you take it straight from the word of what China is saying as well, they're openly saying this trip is not going to prevent Chinese intervention in Taiwan. So even if that's your goal, this is not the right way to go about doing that, right? You wouldn't go and do this provocative trip where you're just increasing the tensions and making it more likely that China is going to take some sort of an action in the immediate future. So again, this whole trip top to bottom just seems completely unnecessary and doing absolutely nothing other than escalating tensions at a time where, again, we still have the proxy war in Ukraine and, massive tensions right now. And we also had the UN chief coming out and saying that right now we have basically a historically unprecedented level of risk in regards to a nuclear confrontation between either the United States and Russia or China and the United States or, many different other factors that could play into this type of thing. But, when the UN chief is coming out here and saying that we are one miscalculation away from nuclear annihilation, maybe it's time to ease off the pedal a little bit and stop trying to play the global police role with the United States. But again, they continue here saying former Taiwanese foreign policy planning chief Dale J. Win Chi, sorry if I'm completely butchering that name, but they derided the notion that Pelosi was coming to the island to support the Taiwanese people, saying, "Support your ass," he said during a Taiwanese television interview, adding with a reference to the Chinese People's Liberation Army, "You want to support us to fight against the PLA? You Yankees want us to buy weapons from you. Are you here to support Taiwan or to provoke a war? What the hell are you doing here, Pelosi? The relationship between the mainland and Taiwan is already very tense. Supporting Taiwan? We don't need your support." So again, I don't really have much background on this guy's politics or his history or anything, so take it with a grain of salt. But I do think that again, the underlying sentiment here is 100% right, which is what is the actual goal of this trip? How is this going to better the security interests of the United States? How is this even going to benefit the security interests of Taiwanese people who do want to maintain the status quo right now? I don't think that it is, and that's not just my opinion. Again, that is the opinion of the State Department under Joe Biden. But we also had this statement from one of his spokesmen for the State Department, John Kirby, coming out here and basically reaffirming that there hasn't been an official change in U.S. policy, kind of contradicting the entire trip that Pelosi is saying here. So let's go ahead and watch this short clip.
We've repeatedly said that we oppose any unilateral changes to the status quo from either side. We have said that we do not support Taiwan independence, and we have said that we expect cross-strait differences to be resolved by peaceful means. We have communicated this directly to the repeated.
Right. So, I mean, short little clip there. He went on to talk about it a little bit more. But again, at the end of the day, the way that I interpret this type of thing is obviously nobody wants China to just invade Taiwan and have complete unilateral control over the island. But if you actually did support Taiwanese independence, then you wouldn't be doing this type of trip, which is, even if you personally don't believe that it's provocative by its inherent nature, the Chinese government is clearly interpreting this as a provocative move. And they're not only interpreting it as that, but they are also gearing up their military equipment equipment in order to, do some sort of a show of force in the Taiwan Straits. So, at the end of the day, I don't really see any point whatsoever in her making this trip other than just increasing tensions and increasing, the amount that our U.S. multinational weapons manufacturers and defense contractors are going to be getting as a result of Cold War II electric boogaloo. If you guys remember when I covered on this channel back a couple months ago before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, you had actual defense contractors who were in their investor meetings, and they were openly talking about and gleeful about the fact that there had been increased tensions with Russia and increased tensions with China because that's where they make their big bucks. And so, at the end of the day, I don't see this as serving the interests of the American people. I don't see this as serving the interests of the Taiwanese people, who overwhelmingly, again, according to all the polling data I've seen, want to maintain the status quo. I don't see it being in service of the global community in terms of the risk that we are seeing right now of actual global nuclear confrontation between superpowers. So there's really no reason whatsoever for her to be making this trip other than to do a little bit of posturing and boost her own political profile, I guess. I mean, she's a billion years old at this point. Maybe that's really what her intentions are. She just wants to, go out with a bang and leave us with the mess that is in her wake.